Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about Search Console if you can.
It's really, I know everybody knows Search Console, how important it is, right? But we started out looking at what is Google AdWords talking about in terms of search volume.
Right.
And also what is SEMrush looking at in terms of search volume.
Right.
If we had gone with what AdWords was telling us and SEMrush, we would never have taken on this client.
Okay.
The disparity between what we ended up seeing in Google Search Console and what was being shown in Google AdWords was enormous. Bigger than anything I ever saw in retail.
Including SEMrush also? They underestimated also?
Oh, totally.
It's interesting.
Totally. Because first of all, SEMrush doesn't pick up on all the sectors in the website. It might be really strong when it finds something, but niche business sectors,
right.
it's not that good.
Right. I've
Sorry,
heard that.
SEMrush folks, but you're really great. But
I've heard that. I heard that when it comes to
like
major, like, you know, want to buy Nike sneakers, they're pretty on target.
Totally.
But when it comes to like, you want to buy a Rode wireless mic, that's really, really niche, and the search volume for that is probably way lower. And when the search volume is way lower, they can't properly estimate what the real search volume is.
Yeah. You know, like for example, in the competitive analysis section of SEMrush, they're saying our client competes mostly with Amazon. You know, that's useless. That's a useless...
right. If it's B2B, it's not really competing with Amazon.
No, I mean, Amazon shows up on every page for a lot of things, but It doesn't mean that it's a real competitor, and it's not really their competitor in search either. Amazon might show up, but we're not trying to beat Amazon. Amazon will be there, and we're hoping that we'll be either above or below Amazon, and that's fine.
And that's why these are tools. Like, I mean, you can give somebody a shovel, or you can give somebody a wrench, and they don't know how to use it. That's why you have to hire the plumber for using the wrench in the right place. You hire the SEO who knows how to look at these tools and understands this. I mean, you just set up Google Ads in automation completely by itself, you probably burn that through tons and tons of wasted money. If you just look at the tools like SEMrush or any of these tools as not knowing anything about SEO, you probably waste all your time. That's why you want to hire a skilled person that understands what the tools are saying and can really understand, interpret that information and deploy those things that are really necessary.
Exactly. And what also is interesting is that we really don't necessarily need to rank for the generic term, like intelligent process automation.
Right.
That's an informational query. But when somebody's doing intelligent process automation insurance, that's no longer an informational query anymore. That's somebody looking for a vendor. And what's cool about B2B, Barry, is I think this is one of the reasons the discrepancy between Search Console and what AdWords shows. When you have a business at stake, you're not really looking to click on the first ad. This is my, I've seen this for 20 years. People are not necessarily clicking on an ad to find out about a business thing. They're actually going into search results. So they're skipping the ads. So Google AdWords might tell you you're going to get 10 clicks. But meanwhile, in the organic search, I'm telling you, it's an exponential increase over what AdWords would tell you.
Right. I assume because if B2B, you're buying something that's a pretty hefty price
hundreds
tag.
of thousands to millions of dollars.
Right. You're not going to just click on one result and that's it. You're probably click on several of them and do your analysis and figure out what's good.
Yeah, that's another big difference, of course, between retail. Where if you're buying a power saw and Home Depot has an ad up there, you very well might click on the Home Depot ad because you know you can go get it in 2 minutes.
Right. So I know you also use like Screaming Frog, and you said that somehow that kind of finds your gaps.
Yeah, so we were talking about how SEMrush, for example, might leave out a whole segment of competitors that you want to look at. So using Google, using site queries, you can figure out who your real competitors are if you don't know them already.
Right.
And what we do is we go in and we crawl the site of the competitor, tick the box in Screaming Frog that says store HTML, I think. We download all the content. And then to start off, Screaming Frog has a word cloud.
Right.
So we can see, oh wow, this company has a big insurance presence. So then we'll look at every page that has insurance in the title and throw it into a frequency like SEO Quake or something, and find out the terminology that really major competitors in this field are using. And you can't get that from generic software.
Right. And often I think like a lot of people early on, especially in the B2B segment, they might be searching for something not the way your clients describe it. They probably talk about it internally a certain way.
Yeah.
And when their clients have a need or there's some type of problem they need to solve, people are searching something completely different in terms of, and then eventually they figure out what the official name is, and they're ready to buy it.
You have to be speaking the language of your client.
Unless I assume how you figure out how to create your blog post is like, all right, in what buying process are the prospects calling it this versus that versus the other thing? And obviously that's all part of the pillar page, but you could branch out and try to like make
Search Console is a great tool for that too, because Google's going to give you little indications. Like, our client Indico was doing intelligent process automation, and then we realized by looking at the impressions that intelligent document processing, a little variation called IDP, was actually more common for queries than the IPA. So what did? We went out and created a pillar page for intelligent document processing, which is off the charts. And we did that through competitive analysis and using Search Console. So a lot of quantitative analysis goes into it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Google recently came out with how they're using MUM, Google MUM algorithm, which they announced, I think, a few months ago. And then in, I think, June of 2021, they basically said we're using, the first case of them using MUM, which is a multivariant, multitask unified model. So MUM is basically, Google described how they're using it, basically, and how they used it the first time, which was this past month, was to come up with a unified classification of all the COVID, how people are searching for COVID vaccine names. Sputnik for the Russian one or whatever it might be, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, AZ, all the different types of variations, all the misspellings. And they found there was like 800 different variations of the vaccine name used in 50 different languages. And this MUM technology was able to kind of pull it all together. The question with that is, when you're kind of creating these pillar pages and trying to say, what are customers searching for versus what do we call it internally, Google's probably going to get smarter at figuring out, all right, a query phrase in maybe a more novice way really means this as written by a more expert level piece of content. But the question is, all right, so they understand that this means that, like the more expert version means the more novice version of that phrase. So, calling it, I don't know, whatever the terminology you came up with, eventually maybe it won't matter, but I'm thinking maybe it will matter because Google could determine throughout that process what the buying process is. Is somebody first trying to figure out and do research about 5 different types of companies that offer that solution, or are they ready to buy it? And if they're ready to buy it, maybe it's more of the technical term, or maybe not. I mean, the question is, how is Google going to use this MUM technology that maybe apply to how SEOs are thinking about how to write their content? And will that change all the concepts around pillar pages and not? It reminds me of I don't remember, maybe 15 years ago, Google had this feature in search which let you actually filter by reading level. So
I remember that, yeah.
And a lot of people don't remember that, but you've been around for a while. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so Google knows based on the type of query, if it's a more complicated query, should I put a higher expert level reading level or not? And now we're kind of seeing it without that type of feature. And the question is, how might that change over time? And it's always fascinating. I mean, your eyes lit up when I said that because you could see all this stuff happening 15 years ago kind of being here today. And now with all this MUM stuff, it's like, oh, maybe we could just scale it all back and go back to writing like a normal person, which we do anyway.
Yeah.
But we're kind of thinking in the back of our head, how will Google or a searcher understand this? And maybe we shouldn't have to think that way. Yeah. That's what Google thinks. Searchers shouldn't have to think this way.
Yeah.
That's why Google builds this technology.
Yeah. I think there's a little ways that Google has to go. I'll give you a great example. One of our titles, HTML title tags, used the word use case. We figured, hey, business person wants to know what's the use case for your technology.
Right.
We put use case in, and Google painted us into a corner. Even though the article was much greater than use cases, had a lot of stuff, the only thing we could rank for was use case when the title tag. So I said, hey, let's take the use case off. Something's wrong here. We took the use case off. All of a sudden, we started to rank for all these other terms. So as smart as Google's NLP is, they're stupid in some ways.
And that's what I love about SEO. You could get a new client, and every single page on the website says homepage on the title tag. Right. And it's it's an easy win. Just change the title tags, and all of a sudden you're on page 1 for whatever term you want. And look at how great I did for you. It's just interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the final few topics.
Yeah.
So I know you wanted to I think you kind of discussed this as well, leveraging best performing blog posts as proof of concept models.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have any more to say to that. We're kind of like jumping all over the place. But
Yeah, so sometimes you don't know where to start with a client or with anything. So, you know, you want to keep the cost down in case nothing works. You know, you haven't, you know, cost the client an expensive thing. So our model is to try to provide where we can a proof of concept. Like, let's do a blog post. Let's do a mini pillar page, you know, not 1,200 words, but 600 words. And we have to wait. And again, the tool we go to is Search Console. Are we seeing any evidence that Google's picking up and giving us a chance? We did this for insurance, for IPA, Intelligent Process Automation Insurance, found a couple blog posts that really worked and said, okay, I think it's time to be able to do a pillar page. And we were really off to the races after that. So on the other hand, it can work in the reverse. Once you have a pillar page that's working well, you can say, you know what, there's all these offshoots, there's these sub-verticals. We really don't want to create a pillar page, but what about doing a series of either blog posts or mini pillar pages and see if we get traction? So it's a great way from a client perspective to try to convince them that it's worth working with you because you have their costs in mind.
And does it usually work, or like maybe 50-50 it works, or is there like some type of like, are you confident always it's going to work, like when you create the proof of content?
Oh, definitely not. For the content specifically?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I would say 20% of the content works really well, and 80% works okay. Some of it doesn't work at all. It's a great point. You have to be able to broadcast, test enough content, because if you pick the wrong one in the first place, it might not work, and you might be leaving money on the table because you picked the wrong one and it's the other four that work. So that's why the blog post idea, do a series and see, does one of them work? And that's worked with several clients where, you know, you do 5 blog posts, 2 of them might work and 3 don't, so you toss the 3 out temporarily, and you figure out how do we leverage the 2 that do work.
It's funny because I write a lot, as you know. Tremendous amount. I think I'm probably at 40,000 articles on search. In any event, people think like, Barry, you know, you wrote so much, you know when before you write something if it's going to be a big hit or not. I'm like, no, I don't.
It should be that easy.
Even if it is, I mean, sometimes I think I wrote something that's going to be amazing and it's going to get a tremendous amount of attention, social media attention, rankings or whatever. And sometimes I'll post something and I'll be like, yeah, this is nothing, no big deal. I just want to get it out there so it's in the archives of the search industry. And it turns out to be a huge hit.
Yeah, of course.
And it's just funny, I mean, how this stuff works. And that's why sometimes you kind of have to, like, you know, shoot spitballs all over the place and see what sticks.
Yeah. You remember the old phrase? One of the first guys who did content marketing was John Wanamaker back in the 1800s. He invented content marketing to a certain extent. And they asked him, how come you spend so much money on marketing? You know, you're a successful businessman. Because I don't know which one works. So I have to spend money here and I have to spend money here, and I can never pick which one works right. So I have to spend in both places.
That's true. And you think about it, that's how VC, like venture capitalists work. They invest in so many, and they hope that maybe there's one big win out of 10 they invest in.
Exactly.
And the same thing with businesses. They got to diversify. I mean, I think on your profile you say you just don't do SEO. You do LinkedIn, paid search, and all this other stuff. So diversification for anybody is super important, any business and so forth.
Yeah, for another client, we do LinkedIn ads. And, you know, we do an ad and we go, this is going to be a killer. This is going to knock me. And it does 0. And then, like you say, the ad that looks like it wasn't going to do anything becomes the winner.
Exactly.
So A/B testing is
you just got to test. And even you might want to run it 6 months later. It might do great.
The timing is different, yeah.
So there's so many factors when it comes to this, especially in SEO. The variables are all over the place. So it's always interesting to test.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you can leverage the best performing pillar pages, and you can just work off of those. A lot of people, like you said, looking at the Search Console data and so forth, but you could expand from there, basically.
Yeah. So we have another client that is a major telecom, one of the largest telecoms in the world.
Right.
But they're building a research site. They never had a research site outward facing to the client, and we're finding the same thing, that certain topics related to physics, for example, they have a physics thing, are doing really well. And who would have thought that this particular very, very narrow stuff would be doing well, and other stuff that we thought was going to do fantastic is not doing well. So you just don't know what you don't know. So
keep trying and keep testing and keep doing as much as you can in the marketing side.
Exactly.
Cool. I appreciate you coming here. Could you please tell people on this camera how to follow you, how to look you up? Are you on Twitter? Just your website, whatever it might be.
Yeah, website is saratogab2b.com. Charley Spektor again, and feel free to contact us. So I'm not looking for too much business. To be honest, I came here because I had some very interesting stuff I wanted to share with you.
This was super interesting, and it really does pretty much, it does basically confirm everything that everybody else has been telling me on these videos, and it confirms what some of the major companies are doing. You see HubSpot's strategy, you see a lot of these companies' strategies around building out these pages. It does work. I mean, what you're trying to do is satisfy the user on your website, which ultimately Google wants to rank very well. Although they just want to rank the feature snippet component of it and give people the answer in a short version of your really massive page. But it is what it is, and this is the Googleverse we live in right now. Until that all changes in maybe a year or two from now.
Right.
And that's the beauty of this. Is you've been in the space for how long, and SEO has changed so much, and it just makes it so exciting. So I appreciate you coming here and sharing your wisdom, and definitely hit up Charley and see how he can help you. But not too many of you, only a few of you.